Despite Washington's reputation as an environmental leader, tonight the King 5 investigators exposed the state is failing to hit many of its environmental goals. As King 5's Susanna Frame reports, it appears state leaders don't want you to know about that.
Washington State, we're the poster child for environmental excellence.
We're the first generation to feel the sting of climate change.
In 2019, Governor Jay Inslee ran for president on the platform.
Defeat climate change. Climate change is real. Defeating climate change. The demon of the climate crisis.
But here at home, the King 5 investigators have found Washington isn't meeting many of the state's identified environmental goals. State records show over the last decade, we're recycling less, not more. Greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, the state's biggest carbon polluter, are up, not down. And so are overall carbon emissions, despite a state law requiring a reduction.
A lot of areas were failing badly.
Todd Myers is the environmental director at the Washington Policy Center, a conservative think tank.
It's critical that state government and politicians live up to their promises and meet those goals so that the people of the state of Washington get what they voted for, get what they're paying for. That's critical.
The state is meeting some environmental goals, including the number of registered electric vehicles like this one. The governor set a goal of 50,000 by 2020. We've smashed that with about 150,000 on Washington roads right now. On this one, the state is not leading by example. 2 years ago at a UN climate summit in Scotland, the governor announced a bold step, an executive order mandating 100% of the state-owned fleet of vehicles be electric by 2035. His office sent out this press release touting the move to help slash carbon emissions. But a new state report shows Washington agencies are way off track and unlikely to meet that goal.
It's challenging to do it, but it's very important that we follow through on our commitments because the climate doesn't care what we say, it cares what we do. This is a delivery van. This probably gets maybe 14 miles to the gallon.
Matthew Metz is the founder of Cultura, a nonprofit dedicated to eliminating gasoline use in the U.S.
And they're asking the private sector to make a lot of change for the climate, which needs to be done, but the state also really needs to do it.
My name is Mandeep Connell, and I'm a director of Results Washington.
When Inslee came into office 10 years ago, he created a state agency, Results Washington, to set, measure, and publicize state goals such as environmental targets.
And the intent was results-driven government.
State government expert John Bernard was the governor's advisor in setting up Results Washington.
The purpose of it was to get focused on measurable improvement. Measure and see if things are working, set targets.
To actually prove if the state's doing better.
Right.
Prove it.
Right. We're spending a lot of money. Does that money get what we're trying to get done?
But over the years, Results Washington has watered down the results. They've scrubbed most of the environmental goals and measurements from their website. Instead, it now features pages of state reports, links to federal information, graphs, maps, and spreadsheets.
I think it's a lost opportunity. If you are wanting to be results driven and you don't keep score, it's literally impossible to know if you're doing well, making progress. It's literally like playing basketball without keeping score.
The director of Results Washington sent us a statement saying they changed course to make data collection more effortless and timely, and they're evaluating their process to make it easier to access all the information at first glance. Can you tell by looking at this if the state is meeting its goals?
No.
On a Capitol Hill sidewalk, we tested the site out with citizens. This is Results Washington. How are we doing in meeting our goal?
I mean, it doesn't really say anything about goals.
You see, I'm just not, like there's so many numbers.
No one we spoke with understood how the state stands on environmental goals. From looking at this website, can you tell what the goal is for our greenhouse gas emissions?
No, not at all.
A lot of numbers.
A lot of numbers. No information about where we're going with it.
Well, We wanted to ask Governor Inslee about the missed targets and Results Washington. His office turned us down twice. Hey, Governor Inslee, it's Susanna Frame from King. How are you? So we caught up with the governor at a public event in October. Sir, I've been trying to organize an interview with you to talk about just a quick one, about our state's climate policies and our targets. And as you know, most of them haven't been met. And so I'm just curious. But I've tried, and I've been told
no. Can we get an interview with her? She wants to talk about the climate policy.
Okay.
Can we arrange that? Yeah, let's do that. So we sit down and have
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
that would be great, Governor.
Great,
Thank you. Despite that commitment for an interview, it didn't happen. Inslee's office said he was too busy and that King 5 was off the mark by not focusing on the governor's climate policy wins. Critics say policy is one thing, results and being transparent about them are another.
Government exists to help make our world a better place. If I don't keep score, how do I know if I made a difference? And we need them to make a difference. We need the accountability, not just for the people who work in the state, but who govern and who make the laws. They need to be accountable.
Tonight, in a King 5 exclusive, a former state employee accuses Washington leaders of forcing him out of his job after refusing to lie about how a new state policy would most likely hike up gas prices.
The Economist predicted an Inslee-backed plan to reduce carbon emissions would cost consumers plenty at the pump. But as King 5 investigator Susanna Frame reports, the former employee says he was punished when he refused to keep that information under wraps.
Well, I tried to do the right thing and they eliminated my job.
Scott Smith says his 35-year career as a public sector economist was ruined over gas prices. For the last 5 years, he's been the state's top economist in forecasting pricing at the pump. It was his job to mathematically predict how much revenue the state should expect to make on gas taxes and fees. But after nearly 4 decades of service in the field, Scott says his latest calculations for the Washington State Department of Transportation ticked off state leaders, and he says he felt forced to resign.
I've been damaged. I'm 64 years old. I've got nowhere to go. They left me no other choice.
When a new state policy to fight carbon emissions and climate change went into effect early this year, that's when the trouble started for The Economist. The policy is called the Cap and Trade Program, where the state's biggest polluters must pay for their carbon footprints. Then the state uses the money on things like subsidizing solar energy and getting more electric cars and buses on the road. State leaders told the public not to worry. Cap and trade wouldn't mean higher prices at your favorite gas station.
I don't think anybody is going to sit there on January 1st and say, oh, price just went up a bunch. It must be those new carbon regulations Ecology put in place. I really don't think it's going to be noticeable.
So all in all, over time, we don't think there'll be a big impact on prices at the pump or customer prices.
And as prices went up, government officials pointed to other reasons for the hikes.
Look at the profits they have made on our backs in the last couple of years.
This summer, Governor Inslee held a press conference blaming the increases not on state policy, but on the greed of big oil.
The very industries that are causing this massive pollution are today gouging us in their oil and gas prices.
Well, that just flies in the face of reality. It's really 6th grade math.
Scott Smith's analysis found cap and trade would create a noticeable hike on gas prices. His estimate, 45 to 50 cents a gallon. An illegal complaint filed today against WSDOT and the governor's office. He alleges his boss told him to keep that quiet. Management would prefer he not include cap and trade surcharges in his quarterly report.
I wouldn't do it because it just wasn't right. I've never had anyone tell me to jimmy the numbers, to come up with some artificial number. Never.
Smith put the predicted increases in his report anyway, and his complaint alleges the retaliation was swift and ugly from there, including his duties were scaled down or eliminated. WSDOT tried to change and backdate his employee evaluation. His boss refused to let him visit his elderly mother over the Thanksgiving holiday.
So it was those types of games that are ridiculous, that are unprofessional, and that I think frankly hurt this guy's soul. He's a brilliant economist, and then to be treated this way, just he had had enough.
Jackson Maynard is Scott Smith's attorney.
The message to the state of Washington is that you cannot bully state employees. You cannot force them to lie to support a political narrative for powerful people.
Smith says telling citizens and policymakers the truth was his job, and that state law and his conscience wouldn't allow him to operate any other way.
I was obligated as part of my duties to produce forecasts of fuel. So I had nowhere to escape, nowhere to hide. And I had to, I guess for lack of a better term, walk the plank.